Usually, when we talk about magic, there's this underlying expectation of, I don't know, whimsy.
Right, like a fairy tale.
Exactly, like a fairy tale. You wave a wand, you mutter some pseudo-Latin phrase, and like a fireball just shoots out into the room.
Yeah.
It feels completely arbitrary, entirely unmoored from reality, or just pure make-believe.
Well, we culturally default to that romanticized version, you
Yeah.
know? We like the idea of miracles that don't really require any heavy lifting, things that are unbound by the strict, frustrating laws of physics.
Yeah. But stepping into the world of 19th century esotericism, that fairy tale logic completely vanishes.
Oh, completely. It's gone.
Because we're looking at a magical landscape that is, well, it's a rigid, unyielding schematic. And that rigid, unyielding schematic is exactly what we're examining today on this deep dive.
Hmm.
We have Ben Hod's curriculum on the 19th century occultist Eliphas Levi on the table, and our mission today is to unpack his radical cosmological definition of gender.
Which is a heavy topic.
It is, it is. And just to be super clear for everyone listening right off the bat, this is absolutely not about modern sociopolitical gender roles. We're not getting into that. We're just reporting on Levy's framework.
Right.
He's using the word gender to describe a much older structural concept, like the universal grammar of active and passive forces.
Yeah, to really understand this grammar, we have to start with Levy's ultimate premise. For him, magic is an unyielding mechanics of the spirit.
Okay.
It's the mastery of equilibrium between opposing natural forces. He views the absolute, cosmic unity as something that can only manifest itself through binary opposition.
So it's not just a philosophical idea for him.
No, not at all. To turn that abstract idea of opposing forces into a functional toolkit for a practitioner, he starts with a radical rewrite of the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus.
Which is famous, right? I mean, the traditional translation of the Emerald Tablet is actually quite poetic. It's what is above is like what is below.
Right, it's like,
It's is like is a statement of reflection. But Levy deliberately changes that passive phrase is like to the rigid, mathematical, is equal to.
exactly.
So what is above is equal to what is below. That shifts the entire paradigm from like a metaphor to a hard equation.
And by making it an equation of absolute equality, he completely relocates magic. He moves it out of the realm of superstition and squarely into the realm of natural law.
Wow. Okay.
So the above in this equation is the active, piercing thrust of the will. He terms this the ideal phallus, or the principium.
The principium.
Yeah, but this is crucial. A vague spiritual yearning, like just pointing your will at something, isn't enough. It's useless on its own.
Because it needs something to hit.
Exactly. It requires dense structural resistance to actually manifest. That resistance is the below, which Levy calls the formal ecteus.
Okay, let's clarify those terms for a second because they carry some intense historical weight.
They really do.
Formal comes from the Latin formalis, which means the essential nature or outward shape. And kphetes comes from the ancient Greek kates.
Right.
And if you look at antiquity, this term was heavily tied to the Eleusinian mysteries. You know, those ancient Greek initiation rites centered on agriculture, the underworld, the cycles of life. And it explicitly denoted the female genitalia.
Yeah, and Levy isn't using it for Victorian shock value here.
Right. He's not just trying to be provocative.
No, he is using it as a precise metaphysical diagram. The arteis functions here as the dark matrix. It is the structural vessel that catches and tames the volatile creative impulse of the phallus.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. So it's essentially like basic electricity.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like you can have a massive power plant humming with positive charge, but without a negative terminal like a receptacle to create friction and actually complete the circuit, the light bulb just doesn't turn on. The energy has nowhere to ground itself.
And if we scale that up to the cosmos, pure unity acts exactly like that sterile void. A positive terminal with nowhere to go simply dissipates into nothingness.
It just fizzles out.
Exactly. In this Levian system, you don't beg the above to descend. You don't pray for it. You meticulously prepare the ecteus below. You build a vacuum-sealed psychological and ritual receptacle.
A vacuum-sealed receptacle.
Right. And once that structural mold is built, the cosmic force has no choice but to flood into it because it's compelled by the immutable law of equilibrium. Nature hates a vacuum.
So we have our positive and negative terminals. But I mean, raw potential and a structural vessel just sitting next to each other don't really do anything on their own.
Yeah.
What is the actual mechanism when they, plug into each other?
They collide and lock.
Lock.
Yeah, Levius introduces this concept of the Gnostic stauros. So the vertical phallus represents the Neoplatonic one.
The ultimate indivisible source of all reality in classical Greek philosophy.
Exactly, or the active Hebrew letter yod. When it inserts into the horizontal castes, which is that receptive primordial substance, they don't just bump into each other.
Okay.
They lock together by suction to form a cross.
And the term stauros, originally that meant an upright impaling stake in ancient Greek. It's a very visceral, violent image.
It is.
Mhm.
And Levy uses this specific Gnostic flavor to move the philosophical cross away from being a Christian symbol of passive vicarious suffering.
Oh, wow. He reclaims it.
He transforms it into an instrument of deliberate stabbing creation. It's an act of metaphysical violence.
And the text mentions that this crossing of the two produces four, so it doesn't just sit there as a static plus sign, it spins.
It spins violently. The fierce rotation of the locked cross sweeps out a circle of 360 degrees.
Generating the universe.
Yes, it creates what occultists call the hermetic wheel of Ezekiel. It becomes a literal engine that translates binary tension into the plural chaos of the material universe.
Okay, so if this cross is violently spinning to generate reality, what does that mean for the person actually trying to practice this magic? I mean, do you just hold on for dear life? Because you can't just be the vertical aspiration floating up in the clouds of spiritual thought, and you can't just be the horizontal passivity buried in material density. You have to somehow stand exactly in the eye of the hurricane.
You must occupy the 0 point of the axis. You have to stand in that burning intersection where the friction of absolute opposites becomes rotational force.
That sounds exhausting. Mentally, that has to be an agonizing space for a practitioner to hold.
It's incredibly difficult. It requires holding two completely contradictory states of consciousness at exactly the same time.
How does someone even do that? You're dealing with the pull of total action and total surrender simultaneously.
Well, you must have an unbending, fiery will to force a change in reality while simultaneously possessing an absolute cold detachment from the result. If you lean too far into the desire, you lose the horizontal grounding. If you lean too far into detachment, the vertical will collapses.
So the magic fails either way.
Exactly. The 0 point is the tension between those two states.
Okay, so to illustrate the 0 point balancing act architecturally, Levy maps these cosmic forces onto something highly iconic, the Temple of Solomon.
The pillars.
Right, specifically the two massive pillars that stood at the entrance of the Kabbalistic temple, Yachin and Boaz. So in standard esoteric lore, Yachin is the active, spiritual, merciful pillar on the right. It corresponds to the letter Yod and the number 1.
Right.
And Boaz is the passive, material, severe pillar on the left. It corresponds to the letter Beth, which means house, and the number 2.
But, and this is where Ben Hod's curriculum highlights a glaring anomaly in Levy's text.
Yeah, this part is wild.
Levy writes, and I quote, "The unity is Boaz, the duality is Jachin."
Wait. How is reversing the pillars a profound truth? I mean, unity is Boaz, duality is Jachin. He tied the concept of unity to the dark, passive pillar of the number 2, and duality to the active, light pillar of the number 1.
Yeah, he completely flips it.
That sounds more like a master teacher laying a trap so his students don't take the text literally. Like he's just trolling the literalists of his day.
Well, yes, he absolutely loved mocking, grimoire-thumping literalists. It's a cryptographic chiasmus.
Oh, what?
A chiasmus.
Yeah.
An intentional crossing or inversion of the terms, kind of like an X, left as a deliberate blind in the middle of the text.
Okay.
Modern commentators, like John Michael Greer, they usually glide right past it. They assume it's just a typo or a translation error.
But it's on purpose.
Entirely. Levy felt that if you just copy his book like a recipe without actually understanding the mechanics, you'll metaphorically blow up your own laboratory.
Right.
But beyond just being a trap, it forces the reader to confront a deeper Neoplatonic truth.
So if you're just like memorizing correspondences from a chart, that completely breaks your brain.
Exactly.
You're forced to actually understand the kinetics. Raw, unified, potential pure unity is completely inert until it is contained. It needs the dark matrix, the passive container of Boaz, to ground it. So unity actually finds its home in Boaz.
And conversely, to establish anything at all, which, by the way, is what the name Jachin translates to, he shall establish, requires projecting out of unity.
Aha.
To create a universe, or even to just cast a spell, you have to separate subject from object. the very act of establishing is fundamentally an act of duality.
So the act of shining a light inherently creates a shadow.
Yeah.
The white pillar casts a black shadow, and the black pillar holds the secret seed of light.
You have to understand that kinetic relationship to operate the machine. It's never just a static list of symbols.
Right, and Levy broadens this out, doesn't he, to show it isn't just a Hebrew or Western concept.
He does. He's very syncretic.
He invokes the mythical Chinese emperor Fuxi and the I Ching. The unity is the continuous yang line, which represents active human will, and the duality is the severed, broken yin line, representing the passive vessel. He's demonstrating that this primordial tradition is globally uniform. The broken line of the I Ching is mathematically identical to the structural receptacle of the Cadiz we talked about earlier.
Exactly. He then argues that antagonism is the primary engine of the cosmos. He traces the word antagonism back to the Greek antagonisma, which literally meant a struggle in the public games.
Like wrestling or combat.
Right. Friction isn't a mistake in the universe, it's the generator. And he maps this onto what he calls the generative conflict between the forces of Cain and Abel.
Okay, so in this cosmological framework, the Cainite force is the initiator who fractures. It plows the field, it sows the seed, it destroys to create.
Yes, revolution.
Right, revolution and rebellious force. Whereas the Abel current is the teacher who consolidates. It waters, harvests, and builds to preserve, representing conciliation and peace. The active force expands, and the passive force gathers and fertilizes it.
And Levy warns that if a magician only operates through that destructive Cainite current-like, constantly fracturing and asserting their will, they face total spiritual exhaustion, complete madness.
Burn out.
They become the Ouroboros,
No.
the serpent devouring its own tail, trapped in this cyclic orbit of self-consuming frenzy. But on the flip side, if they only use the passive Abel current, they face complete stagnation.
So it's a constant cycle. You know, this is almost exactly like the mechanics of building muscle at the gym.
Oh, right, yeah.
You absolutely have to undergo the Cain phase lifting heavy weights, intentionally fracturing and tearing the muscle fibers. But if you never stop lifting, you just destroy your body.
You have to rest.
Yeah, you have to enter the Abel phase. You have to eat, sleep, consolidate, and let the muscle rebuild stronger. You literally cannot have one without the other. But how does a modern practitioner actually navigate that in a daily routine without losing their mind?
Well, practically speaking, it requires strict ritual hygiene.
Okay.
A practitioner might spend an intense period invoking the Cainite force to, say, break a habit, launch a business, or tear down a psychological barrier. But they must formally close that working and deliberately switch to the Abel phase.
Like grounding practices?
Right. Grounding practices, meditation, or just simple physical rest to consolidate the new reality. If you keep swinging the sword, eventually you cut yourself. You must learn when to sheathe the sword and pick up the cup of conciliation.
That metabolic cycle of magic makes perfect sense. But to truly understand Levy's genius here, we have to look at how he constructed this unified global doctrine. Because there's a glaring historical catch.
There really is.
Levy claims that this grand synthesis of active and passive polarity is the, quote, mysterious language of the Kabbalists and the Talmud.
Yeah, and this is where purists get very, very uncomfortable.
I bet.
Because Levy is committing historical violence here by deliberately conflating two completely distinct traditions. I mean, the Talmud is a vast legalistic system of rational dialectic and rabbinic debate regarding Jewish law.
Right.
Whereas the Kabbalah is an esoteric mysticism that emerged centuries later to map the internal anatomy of the divine, using concepts like the Sephirot.
He just mushes them together.
He absolutely does.
And when critics pointed this out, he basically defended his theory by calling his detractors full of ignorance and vulgar maliciousness.
He didn't take criticism well?
Clearly not.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if I find out my guide is just splicing historical wires together and faking his sources, you know, sort of like how the founders of the Golden Dawn Order needed to invent a fake German adept, Fräulein Sprengel, to legitimize their own authority, why should I trust the system at all? Doesn't this make Levy a bit of a fraud?
I mean, that reaction is completely natural. But realizing that, seeing through the historical inaccuracies is actually the threshold of true initiation.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Levy wasn't writing peer-reviewed history for a university.
True.
He was engaging in 19th century mythopoesis, the deliberate creation of a mythos. You have to remember, he was writing during an era of mechanical scientism where the Industrial Revolution was stripping the world of mystery.
Everything was being explained away.
Exactly. He needed a monolithic, ancient authority to build a psychological container robust enough for his readers to actually work within.
Ah, Because the universe doesn't care if your footnotes are in Chicago style.
Exactly. The efficacy of the magic doesn't depend on immaculate bibliographic sourcing. It depends entirely on the internal consistency of the symbolic machine he built.
Okay, that makes sense.
He was an artist of the invisible. He recognized that the human mind needs these massive, ancient archetypes to function effectively. He reworked the old world to build a functional engine for the human soul. And by seeing where he spliced the wires together, you stop being a passive disciple relying on historical dogma, and you start seeing the blueprint of how the psychological machine actually runs.
Oh, wow. So, looking at the entire blueprint Levy has laid out for us today, it all comes down to the absolute necessity of friction.
Yes.
The active phallus meeting the passive Proteus to spin the Gnostic starros of reality. True mastery means standing at the 0 point of the axis, balancing that profound generative friction, whether you view that through the reverse Solomonic pillars of Jachin and Boaz, the yin and yang of the I Ching, or the constant metabolic cycle between Cain's destruction and Abel's peace.
Perfectly said. And to wrap up this exploration, there's a really profound concept drawn from Lurianic Kabbalah, a specific 16th century school of Jewish mysticism founded by Isaac Luria.
Okay.
It's called Tzimtzum.
Tzimtzum.
Yeah. It is the idea that God, being infinite, had to contract and hollow out a dark, empty space within himself just so creation could have room to exist.
Because if he's everywhere, there's no room for anything else.
Exactly. And Levy applies this directly to the practitioner. Every single magical act of construction is mathematically balanced by an act of destruction. The creation of a singular point requires a displacement.
So, if you wish to manifest an ideal, you must dig a pit of shadow equal to your creative desire.
Precisely. The larger your ambition, the more profound the vacuum you must create to stabilize it. So if you're listening and thinking about this, look at your own life. Look at your ambitions. When you forcefully assert your will to create something new, what shadows are you unknowingly excavating to make room for it? Are you prepared to manage the darkness you have to dig up to build your skyscraper?
Man, that is a heavy thought to leave on. Because this isn't a fairy tale where things just magically appear out of nowhere. It's a rigid, structural schematic. If you want the light bulb to turn on, you have to build the entire circuit. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the balance of your own active and passive forces, and we'll see you next time.
I was born where the bright line breaks. 1 foot flame and 1 foot rain. High voice calling from a silver room. Low